Today I had to mix up some paints, and I don't know, I think that's pretty boring, but I thought maybe somebody might want to see, so I'm going to make white, copper, which is just a regular paint, and then I'm going to make some more Soar Era, which is eye candy pigment that I mix with this Pebeo blue-green. So I'm going to show you how I do this in case you're interested. So I have a couple different options, and I'm going to show you the white first because I need that first, and I don't know why, but I use multiple things in my white. So I'll use this Curate color, which is from Hobby Lobby. It's pretty cheap. And then I'll put a little bit of Liquitex Basics, which is more higher quality. And then I also put in a little bit of this liquid acrylic from Hobby Lobby. And this actually makes kind of pearl cells a little bit by itself. The tube, I don't know that it does, but the this container does. And so I figure it's a little bit like satin enamel, so I add a little bit of this into my white to give it a little bit of a satin enamel type of look, but it's a lot cheaper. So let's go ahead and make the white. So for the white, we're going to start with Gloss Medium from Liquitex. We're going to start putting this in there. So depending on what the cup is, it's usually about that much, so not very much, maybe a little bit more. If it's winter, I'll put a little bit more so this dries really fast, and that's useful in the winter, but in the summer, I don't want things to dry too fast, so I'll probably put a little bit less of that. Okay, so next I'm going to add this Curate color, which I don't know if anybody else uses this one, but it has this pump that never works the first time. Okay, so give it like 10 squirts. So I've been making my white a little bit stronger. I went to not as strong. Now I'm back to having it a little bit stronger. And we'll just mix this up. It mixes easily in this gloss medium. And I always use my dark stick when I'm doing a light color so I can kind of see how thick it is. And then the next one I'm going to add is the Liquitex Basics. I just like to have a nicer quality paint in there just in case. That's why it's really good to add this to anything if you're using the cheaper brands of paint. But just for extra assurance, I put in the Liquitex. I'm going to put in maybe that much. It's running out of everything. Okay. Now it's getting kind of thick, so I'm going to add my Floetrol. This is Floetrol plus GAC 800, and it's the thicker mixture that I evaporated out, which I have another video for if you're interested on what I mean by evaporating out the Floetrol. I don't really need the thicker Floetrol because this cheap paint is pretty thick, but that's all I have, so I'm going to use it. Alright. And then I'll add a few drops of this for the satin enamel-y pearl effect. That was a little bit more than I wanted. I think you could add more if you wanted to do more, but I just don't even know if it really does anything. Just like the satin enamel, I couldn't really tell if it did anything. But probably I just don't really use enough. But we'll just throw it in there. Okay, now we can just fill up the rest with the Floetrol. I have my handy dandy little mixer. I think I showed in another video. This is not great for my wrist, but I'll just do this by hand today. Okay. I don't really have any paintings ready for you guys. Had that SD card issue, and then I made something last night, and it wasn't very pretty, so I don't know. I still don't really have a video ready for you to watch. And then paintings are taking several hours to dry these days. I mean, several days to dry. So even if I finish one today, it would be several days before you could see it. So that's why I decided to do this video, which is probably boring, but we'll just do it anyway in case someone is interested. I have to do this anyway. You can fast forward to the pigment one if that's the one you're looking for. I'll try and add chapters, but I don't know, YouTube doesn't always let me do things because I'm not famous enough. Okay, so this is where everybody asks me what's your consistency of your paint. So this one's going to be pretty thick because of the cheap Curate brand. But, so, wipe this off a little bit. So the first thing is that darker stick that I put in here. I kind of like to see that the white covers the edge. So if I'm doing a dark color, I have sticks that are 2 colors, so I would use this for the darker, the darker color. And it's just kind of a visual to tell me if I need to add more paint. So if I do this and the side is covered, then it's probably thick enough. I don't really add as much paint as other people. It looked like a lot of paint because I use this one, but like 10 pumps of that is just a little bit of Amsterdam. It's not the best, but it does thicken it for me. And because I hate adding the gloss gel, that is actually a helpful feature for me. And I have this in black and in blue as well. Okay, so to check the consistency, which I think I showed in a couple other paintings before. So to check the consistency, make sure I can get this up here. I just make a drop and then count how long it takes to disappear. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And I say count because I don't want to say 3 seconds because I'm a New Yorker and I talk fast, so I don't think I would really want to say that that's 3 seconds. I would just say count to 3. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So that's perfect for, I'm going to show you another way. So you can also just make like a circle if you can't see the drop very well and count there. So it's 1, 2, 3. So it's 3. So I like 3.5 for a split cup and 4 for a straight pour. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so it's 3, not 3.5. So I am going to add just a little bit of the gloss medium. And usually I would let this sit because it thickens up over time. And then I would check it right before I use it because sometimes it will get thicker and then I just wasted my time adding gloss gel. But since I don't have time for that today, I'm just going to mix it in. And usually I'll leave it at 3.5 for split cups because I have kind of a collection of every paint that I own mixed up. And that way if I want to just use it and I grab it off the shelf, it'll be okay. And then I'll just thicken it if I need it for a straight pour. So 1, 2, 3.5. Can't count half, but so it's just a smidge past 3. And I didn't really explain that. So this is gloss medium with a little bit of Floetrol, so it's nice and smooth because I have the heavy gloss gel and it's too lumpy. So I just have this kind of nice like this so I can add it. Okay, so this one's perfect. 1, 2, 3. So it's between 3 and 4, so that's perfect. And always check before you use it, of course, because like Amsterdam paints really like to thicken up. I don't have the phthalo blues and greens kind of don't thicken up much usually, unless they have some other color in there. But you really want to check and know your paints a little bit. And if 3.5 is not what you need, then, or you count slower than me, then that's okay. You can just adjust it to whatever your count is once you find that it works. Just kind of keep track of whether or not the consistency that you're using works. And if it does, great. And then just remember that for next time. I'm not going to label white because it's pretty obvious. The next one we're going to do is the Sora Era blue, which is very close to the Pebeo blue. And I'm going to mix those two together. And I usually do mix a pigment with a tube paint, and I'll tell you why I do that. So these pigments from pretty much any company, they kind of don't have a Lightfast rating. And so I don't want this to fade. So this is the Lightfast rating. It's ++, or it'll be in a chart somewhere. I'm not going to go into that on this, but if you see the Lightfast rating on it, it's good and you can use it. So sometimes you'll find it on there. So these Master's Touch pearlized ones that I showed you before, surprisingly actually do list the Lightfastness, and they also list what actual paint pigment is in there, which you don't really get on most other tubes of paint. So it's dioxazine violet, and that has, I'm assuming that's why they rated it highly, because it's the base color is dioxazine violet, which has a good Lightfast rating. So I would usually not mix two metallics together unless I know that it has a nice rating. I think that maybe I'm the only one that worries about the Lightfast rating, but if you look at something like Arteza, this is the metallic color set. It's just a kind of a little small set of all the colors. So 3 to 2 is kind of high, and they don't list 1, but that means it's not very Lightfast. And they'll also give you transparency, which we don't care about right now. But so we know that 3 is Lightfast. So you see on my Pebeo, it's 3. So to be confusing, 3 symbols is very Lightfast, but the number 1 is Lightfast. So if you just see the number 3, that's actually a poor Lightfast rating. It's very confusing. So it's pretty Lightfast, and so I don't worry when I mix this with the pigment, it will help keep the color over time. Probably the only one that worries about this, but I have had some paintings fade really fast in just a couple of months. But I do live in a place that's mostly sunny, rarely ever have clouds, and it's not in direct sunlight, but it faded all the same. And I wouldn't really want to sell that if I have a bunch of faded paints in it like 2 or 3 years later. I haven't really sold any paintings, so I don't have to worry about that, but these are the reasons that I do it like this. So if you're always wondering why I mix, and this is not eye candy, it's all the pigments are like this, so they might be Lightfast, they might not, I just don't know. So back to the Arteza one. So if you were to pick like Tangerine, has a very bad Lightfast rating, and like Electric Blue has a pretty good Lightfast rating, and then we have the Pearl Pistachio, which Mina loves to use. It's actually pretty poor on the Lightfast rating, so it's not going to last very long. And so this is something you can usually get in charts. Not everybody lists it, but the nicer paint brands will, and weirdly enough, the Master's Touch has it on there. So that's actually a lot of information for Master's Touch, but just FYI, these Master's Touch sometimes are very wrong on the back. I'm not sure why they have such a problem, but they're not always the best if you're learning about pigments. So the fluorescents, just on the topic of lightfastness, you won't see me use too many fluorescents because I told you I had a painting that I did and it faded within months. And so you'll see on these, you'll see NR for lightfastness, which is not rated, so they already know that these are going to be terrible, so they don't rate them. Or you'll just see nothing, like on the Amsterdam, or 0. I guess it has a 0 there. So I don't really use fluorescents very much because I've actually seen in a very short time them fading, and I don't really want to have a painting that's only going to last a short time. If you live in a dark, stormy place where it's cloudy, then you might be fine, but you never know who's going to have the painting. But here in my super sunny house, things don't last very long, and I have the newer lowy windows, so not too much UV actually gets through. But they just fade, and I'll throw in the thing from the Holbein that shows what they have to say about the fluorescents. And I found this Holbein Luminous Violet, and I thought that might be a better quality version. But then I started to read the description, and you can see here, the luminous colors contain fugitive fluorescent dyes that will fade over time. We recommend that you photograph your luminous artwork before the colors fade. So their company who's trying to sell you things is basically telling you that your painting is going to fade pretty fast and you should take a picture, which to me is like, why am I spending $11.70 for a painting that won't last very long? I'm going to do the pigment now, so we need to go get our face masks. And this is going to be the Soar Era and the Pebeo. I'm going to tilt it so not as much dust goes. I actually normally do these in the garage so I can walk inside and not have the dust flying everywhere. But that's me, the scientist. I don't want to have any more junk in my lungs than I need to. So again, I'm just going to use the gloss medium first, and it's important that you use this one first, even though it does work if you put Floetrol first. I'm going to put a little more than usual because these do take a little bit to suspend. And so just add a couple of, actually that's probably too much. This one is very strong. I'll try and put it back. I can't really get it out of there now. This is going to be very strong. So the eye candy pigments are just incredibly strong in some colors, and this is one. And Okinawa blue is also pretty strong, so just kind of slowly mix this around. And Michelle uses GAC 100, which she says wets the pigments more, but I haven't tried that yet. And this is this is using the gloss medium from Liquitex. There is other brands should work, but I noticed the one from Jerry's Artarama, I think it's called New York something, doesn't work quite as well to mix it up. Okay, and then once everything is covered, then I'll start doing the usual, smushing it against the side to get the chunks out. And if you were just going to use the pigment by itself, then I just add Floetrol and gloss medium gel to thicken it up, and then you'd be ready, which I have used these without extra paint added, but I just have putting the extra paint in these days. I actually had these eye candies for almost 2 years now, and still not out of a lot of them. Okay, now you can see these are bubbles actually, they're not chunks, but you really do want to make sure you get all the chunks out, because if you do a poor job at this step, you'll end up getting a bubble of powder that pops later if you don't let these sit. Usually if you let it sit, they'll hydrate, but if you don't, you could have a bursted bubble of dry powder on your painting, which is not good. So that's good enough. If you need to add more of this, add more of this, just to make sure it's definitely there. And because this is more of this than I usually use, if I'm doing a pigment only, I put this in there because I have trouble with stuff drying too fast. So you don't really need that. I just add it, but it's winter, so I don't need that right now. Okay, so now we're going to add the Pebeo, which is a similar color. So you can see this is like a greenish blue. And then we'll add, Pebeos are pretty strong as well. I added so much eye candy, that's probably too much as well. But you can see that the Pebeo is like, you know, a more one-sided color, just blue. It doesn't have the tones that the Sora Era does. And one of the other good things about adding some of a tube paint is that you get the thickness that you won't get with just the pigment. So you don't have to add as much gloss gel later to thicken it up. So that's one of the reasons I might add tube paints, just because. And then some pigments have large particles. You can kind of see in between the particles. I don't really like that, so I might add it if it looks like a large particle pigment. This one does. This one's very fine, but there are others that have that. And I'm probably gonna add a little more for thickness. This is not the best example because it's metallic and metallic, but I don't really need any of the other ones right now. I haven't painted anything in a while. Okay, so now that that's incorporated, we can just do the usual. This is Floetrol. I just scraped the sides again. This will definitely, even with a little bit of Pebeo, be very runny because the Floetrol was runny. So it's like barely 2. 1, 2, yeah. It's not even 2 on the mound scale. So I'm going to try and get out of the way so you can see it. So if you drop it and count, and don't look at this little halo that it makes because you want to count till it's flat in there. 1, 2. Yeah. See, it's not even at 2, so we definitely need to add some gloss gel, which is pretty normal with pigments. That's a lot of gel, so it's probably going to be a fast drying paint. So I am going to go ahead and add some GAC 800 just for extra. Maybe it'll slow it down a couple minutes. Not too much. So now we have 1, 2.5. Almost 3. It's almost there. Okay. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So it's 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And so for like a straight pour, when I make a circle, you want it to stay on the top for a couple of seconds. So this is a little bit runny for a straight pour. It's okay for a split cup. I actually used like a count of 2 for split cups in the beginning, and then I used a little thicker just because that's what I had ready. Add a little more because it's only at 3. But you don't want to have it too thick in the split cup, or you get a lot of spitting and sputtering, and you don't get as cute of lines. There we go. 1, 2, 3.5. And I made it a little thicker because I know I have to add just a little bit more Floetrol to finish it up. I definitely don't fill it to the top because you have to add a lot of gloss gel, and it's hard to mix. So it should be good for now. And there's our color. Now I'm going to make some copper. It's probably not exciting, and you probably aren't going to watch this, but so I have these cups, which if you're watching Donna, I have some copper here for you. So I'll just reuse these forever, kind of, until they have so much chunky stuff at the top I can't scrape the sides while I'm mixing. And these bigger cups tend to get more chunks. This one looks pretty nice, but I don't really get new cups very often, and often it will, if it's one that sat there for like a year, it's actually dry, you can peel it off. But we'll do the same thing, even though there's a little bit left in here. Just going to add this gloss medium. And then these are the Joe's Prime really good Lightfast acrylics that you hear me mentioning a lot I use in my painting. So it's from Cheap Joe's Art Supplies. So if you're wondering what the heck that is, that's what this is. And I really like this copper. It always gets all over me though. Probably need another tube. Okay, I think I need more of this. So as long as you don't have a ton left in the bottom, it will still mix okay. And mix that up. Oh. This one is kind of thick. It's a very thick paint, so it's hard to add. It's kind of like golden. It's hard to add if you have too much liquid in there. Get it mixed up without chunks. So they're very thick. I like these a lot better than like Creative Inspirations. It's kind of not good in my opinion. I know a lot of people use it, but I can't get it to work. So I'll just add in the Floetrol. So that's actually very thick. So 1, 2, 3.5. It's almost 4, which is kind of normal with these because they're so thick. So I'm actually going to leave this one. I don't have any more Floetrol filtered, so I'll just leave this and I'll adjust it later once I have time to. So 1, 2, 3.5. So 1, 2, 3.5. Alright, so this is 3.5. 2, 3.5. So that's perfect for a split cup. So I'm going to leave this for now. Adjust it later if I need to. So I have to make some Floetrol and filter it since we just used it all. I wasn't going to show this, but I figured what the heck, I'll just throw it in there in case somebody's interested. So I like this size bottle. I don't really like using bottles for paints because they're nearly impossible to mix and I don't have time for that. So here is my Floetrol. I'll tweak it. This is the already evaporated one. The thing that I use to strain is this little sink strainer doohickey. So we have, this one came as like a set, and this one has kind of a fine mesh, and then this one is a bigger hole mesh, which goes a lot faster for me. And to buy these on Amazon, I had to buy like a 12-pack, so I have a bajillion of these, and I like the little one because it fits here, and if you don't overfill it, it doesn't spill down the side. So this one, I can kind of be careful and do it, but I can't hold this heavy container very well, so I'll show you how I do it. So I'll just hold it over, and then be careful when you don't get it on the outer side. Could probably leave it in the tube, but I'm just going to do this because I know it works. Let me know if you want me to link these little strainers below from Amazon. I don't know that you need 12 of them, but it is a little bit nice to have extras in case you mess something up. I put this stuff on the trash can to let all the juice come out of my stuff because I have a septic tank with fruit trees and stuff downstream. So I don't like this kind of junk in my septic tank, which is also why I don't use fancy paints very often. Anything that's like cobalt, turquoise, or nickel. I don't want those metals in my yard, in my water, so I usually wipe them out with tissues first and get as much off as possible so that stuff doesn't end up in my yard where I'm not going to eat it because heavy metals don't really break down. And so you don't really want to be using fancy paints if you're going to be splashing it everywhere, really. So make sure you check when you're using things, really, if you're interested. It's usually the more expensive paints have those in there, so if you're using like Amsterdam, cobalt, turquoise, regular, it's not going to have that kind of stuff in there. It'll just be phthalo blue or ultramarine blue. Okay, and then I put it back here to let the rest of it go while I finish this. And then one more ingredient. So the GAC 800, I put 6 or 7 drops. 2, 3, 4. Oops. Oh, there goes my drops. Okay, well, it's usually about 6 or 7 drops when I didn't squeeze it too much. Should have removed that little dried spot. And then there's not very much mess. Put this back on. Shake it up. Not good for my wrists. And so I actually cut these tips a little bit more so that it comes out faster because the way that it was when it came is just too thin. So just squeeze really hard, which I don't really like because it hurts my wrist. A broken record hurts my wrist. That's just pretty much my life. But that's it. Until next time.